I think it lags a couple seconds, but I just want to check and make sure that we're up and live in the group.
Is it on Apple?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Let me just type in your name. Is it under the Well Physio or your full name?
It's under Coach's Corner.
Oh,
I'm in the wrong group. That's why. Okay. I don't know why, like every time I do this, it lags a little bit. So just give me a moment. All right. If you guys listening can hear me okay, can you just type like okay in the comments so I know that we're up and live? I can't see it on my end for some reason. I'll just wait a second here. It just happens every time.
I see a hi. Oh, you're asking other people, not right? Okay, because I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so if you guys can hear me okay, then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, good, because I can't see us like on my end, but as long as somebody is there and listening, then we are good to go. All right, cool.
And we'll apologize in advance. We have a gym right outside our office, so it might be a little loud. We might hear some weights playing down. The music is pretty much at that same level, so we apologize in advance if you can't hear us. Just let us know.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think everything sounds good so far. So great, cool. Well, everybody who's here and listening, welcome to the group. This is where we talk about all things, cash-based practice, out of network, even solo practice, just doing something non-traditional in order to practice in a way that speaks to you and that you love to do. So with us today are Erica Wong and Joe White of White Wong PT. They are good friends of mine. We split the city of Las Vegas for CrossFit Physical Therapy. And today they are here to tell us all about their journey and what led them into cash-based practice. We've gotten together and we've gotten to know each other over the past few months and everything. So I'm really excited that they're here. So yeah, with that, thanks for being here, and we'd love to know more about you guys and your journey.
Appreciate the intro, Morgan.
Yeah.
So, got my start in the medical community probably in the mid-2000s. I was ENT for a while, and then I transitioned into personal training, and then worked at a CrossFit gym as a trainer for a while. People would come up, my elbow hurts, my shoulder hurts. I had no idea what to do or say about that. So I started doing research, found people doing performance PTs online or doing performance PT type stuff. Kelly started in his early days. And I just thought that's what PT was. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. These guys teach people how to work out. I teach them how their shoulder can feel better while I can keep them in the gym. So let's do that. And I went to school and it was totally different than what you'd expect. I had no friends that were PTs. I didn't know what to expect going to school. And then you learn very little about business in school too. So Eric and I met in school, and I let her tell her side of the story.
Yeah, so Joe and I met in grad school, and that's kind of our backstory. But getting into PT in general, I think I wanted to be a PT since I was, middle school. So gone through the gamut of following and observing and all that stuff. And we met in grad school, and we had generally had an idea of we wanted to, in a sense, do our own thing. I was a personal trainer for several years, so kind of had that background in general. And just going through that, we just talked about that throughout grad school. And one of the questions I think was just in hindsight, I wish I started more writing in a sense, or organizing my thoughts after grad school, because I feel like that's just a good time to be able to reflect, and you can just write anything that you're writing about. You can just make it, or like, you know, you write your papers or something, you just make that into, how do I explain this to a lay audience? And I think that's the biggest part of what we do now, is figuring out how to communicate to the lay audience.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't always answer the question, but in general, I think that's another thing that I think if I were to go back into grad school and do that again, I would do that during grad school.
And when we met, we pretty much knew that we were going to be doing some kind of a cash-based PT thing. We maybe maybe 6 months after knowing each other, we'd already started conversations about like where we're going to live, where we're going to start the practice at. We just knew that was what we wanted to do. Both a little bit older, like non-traditional students, so we were used to working for other people and didn't always enjoy that. So it's nice to be able to be your own boss and work for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I was going to ask, is like, when did you know that you were going to have to do something like this and not work for anybody else anymore?
I think regionally, physical therapy can look very different. You know, I grew up in California, and we went to grad school in Georgia. I think, Joe did some clinicals in Florida. And I was mostly in Georgia, but the volume of people we saw during that time, I was like, man, this is going to be, I mean, even as a student, you kind of see that, you see other people, you know, seeing how many people that they see, and then just going through the gamut of, you know, figuring out an eval when you're a student and going through that. And you just look at that and like, man, they seem like the people who are working at these companies seem really stressed out. And they don't really, you know, and so you look at that, I'm like, man, I don't really know if I could handle this, you know, in the long term, just because a lot of them were, in a sense, new grads too. So it's tough. And you look at their lives and like, well, that's not something I'm going to be able to sustain like 20 or 30 more years.
And there's a reason why I don't see people that are like 50 still working in an outpatient clinic. You know, even late 40s now is getting kind of uncommon. So there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, just, you know, like we've talked before, but, you know, just my personal experience in outpatient, you know, seeing 25 or 30 people a day was a lot. And I know that it's like not uncommon. You know, that's something that is seen a lot of places. And I think that, you know, just, I mean, we're not machines, you know, we're in a caring profession, and it's supposed to be, you know, like one-on-one care. And it's just, you know, like you guys were saying, like, it's just not sustainable, you know, for one person to keep doing long term. So yeah, and that's why we're all here is to do something that, you know, feels better for us. And then, you know, in turn that provides a lot better care to the patients as well. So tell us about your practice you have now. How did that get started? You know, how long have you guys been practicing, and what you love about it?
So we've been practicing, I'd say, a little over a year for ourselves, but technically we started more in January is when we went more professional than we were before. It was more like a side hustle before, and we just had a table in the middle of the gym, but we didn't have our own room. That started in January. The previous gym closed down. It was kind of actually a surprise to us, but then it ended up being a good thing, so that we ended up moving into the south location of CrossFit Culmination. And then we just opened the north location here maybe a month ago. So we have a location in their north gym as well, in Summerlin area.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that answered all the question. I forgot I was involved in that.
Well, how has your first like year been? Like, how's the journey been being cash practice owners?
It's been fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of an emotional roller coaster sometimes too, but like figuring things out and just learning from, you know, different mistakes that you make, or just being able to connect with other people and figure out, hey, just like that's another reason why we connected too, is like, hey, let's learn from each other and kind of figure this out together, right? And that's a big thing, is, you know, we're not alone in this journey either, even though it might feel it's lonely. You know, whether you're a solo entrepreneur or, you know, you have a bunch of people in your practice, you're still like, there's people all over the country still doing this too. So again, if you're thinking about it and you're hesitant, remember that there are people just like you out there, just maybe not in your area, but there are people out there, so you can connect with them, and you're not alone in the process of figuring things out, because we're still figuring things out entirely. By no means do we have anything going. We learn, we keep learning, and that's the fun part. And I think as we go through our lows, we celebrate the highs as well, and going through that, just realizing that the process of all this stuff we're doing is just to develop ourselves in a sense,
Expect to do a lot of things wrong, and people learn better that way by doing things wrong.
Yeah.
If you get it right the first time, it might be just a mistake. So if you learn everything that you're doing, like if you're doing video editing, for instance, your first thing is called a rough draft for a reason. It's not a perfect thing you're going to put on YouTube. So it's just important to expect that. Expect you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to do a lot of things wrong. Doesn't mean you're not capable or smart or anything like that. It just means that you're learning. And also, I think like Erica was saying, surrounding yourself with people that are doing similar things or understand what you want to do is very important, because we tell our friends that we're doing this, and it's becoming more and more common now. But mentioning it 2 or 3 years ago, you tell someone that you're going to do a cash practice, and everyone's like, "Oh, you can't make any money doing that. Like, no one's going to come see you. You really need to deal with insurance." So I think that just make sure that you're around people that are going to, tell you that or agree with what you're doing. And if they don't, then maybe schedule them less time.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like you're saying, nobody's going to be perfect, especially if you're going into business for yourself. Like, there's so many different things that you have to figure out. But if you are able to surround yourself with people who are doing things similarly, whether it be other therapists or even, there are physicians and other medical practitioners who are taking a non-traditional route, like being able to build that network is only going to, surround you with friends, for one, which is always nice. But then you always have people to learn from, ask questions to. And, I love what you said, Erica, too, that I think is one of the biggest hurdles to get over is, when you're starting a business, you feel like you have to do it all by yourself. But there's so many people out there who are willing to help you along the way too.
Yes, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, that's one thing.
Yeah,
is a tough part too. We tend to be self-sufficient and autonomous. It's just as practitioners, right? And but I don't know anything about audio visual stuff, right? So just going through that process and asking some of our friends and doing some research about it. It's just, I think that's where you just basically build up that vocabulary. It's like in grad school. Mm-hmm. At first you didn't know what, some part of the brain was, right? Then you learned, and then that's just part of your vocabulary now. And that's essentially what we've been doing, but with all parts of running a business. So whether that's taxes, accounting, marketing, sales, all those things, and you just have to develop that vocabulary first to get a general idea, and then you can have more conversations with people and being able to ask the correct questions so you can get the most out of the questions that you're asking.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I don't think anybody's ever brought that up before, that there's a whole new vocabulary to learn, but you get it as you go. And you're not expected to, come out of school knowing all this stuff right away.
Oh yeah, and that's the reason why everybody has a different profession, right? It's because that's what they do for a living, to help other people figure that thing out.
Yeah.
And I find that sometimes, and then I'm looking at reading accounting things, and I'm like, yeah, that's why they went to school to figure that stuff out. I don't want to read the tax code,
Good point. Yeah. And I know you guys have been in practice for kind of over a year now, 1.5 years or so. But if you can think back and remember to your first 3 to 6 months, what do you feel was the biggest challenge that you faced when you were first getting started?
I think the main thing for most cash people is that it's harder to get patients because you have to do your own marketing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different type. So you have to really get people to trust you and believe in what you're doing before they come and see you as a patient. So I think part of the hard part is that building the initial base of customers that you're trying to see, where you're convincing them that this is worth their time.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also say too that sometimes unexpected stuff will happen, and it seems like it's bad at first, but ends up being better. So our gym closing down that we were out of, it was actually a surprise to us. So I was going in there to treat a patient, and then when I walked in, everything was like stripped out. Like the gym was actually moved.
I remember that.
Yeah, and we weren't told about it. So then I had someone showing up to come see me in like 5-10 minutes. So I moved real quick, and I'm like, all right, all the gym's gone. There's no equipment. It's vacant. And I have a patient in like 10 minutes. So then she immediately started looking, and we found us the spot really quick. We just got really lucky with the people that we knew. Somebody just knew that this gym had an open room. But it was awkward treating that patient in the front office with no gym equipment in there. The first time I met him, I swear, didn't bring you here to kill you. We'll stay in the front. We'll keep the lights on. We'll keep the door open if you feel more comfortable. So that was
that was a stressful time. But then we look at it and like, oh yeah, that happened, and then we just kind of forget about it sometimes until we like have to talk about it, or we talk about it again. We're like, oh yeah, remember that when that happened, and we were freaking out. Yeah.
And for now it's funny.
Yeah, you know.
So.
That's like one of my favorite stories for you guys. I can't even imagine that like happening.
Yeah, it's awkward. That's what that is. The first time you met that guy, I mean, you could see in the back, there's obviously nothing there. It really looked like we just operate out of this open warehouse nothing in it. Yeah. Do you want us to answer questions as they come up on the thing?
Sure. I mean, like the next thing I was going to ask you guys, like you were talking about, Joe, where it's like, it's hard when you first get going to figure out how to explain to people your value. And like Erica, like you said, kind of like in layman's terms, like who you are, because nobody even knows what physical therapy is, and like why people should come and see you, like why they should pay you, and so like this comment here, can you share some on how you market for private pay? That was going to be my next question, because I get that a lot. That's like a huge concern for people, is like, well, like how am I going to do this? Who's going to pay me? So what advice do you guys have for that?
Yeah, so we do a few things. In a sense, we kind of use all avenues of communication, if you will, right? So whether that's, in person by doing seminars, that's something that we do either because of the coronavirus, either virtually or online. Mm-hmm. So in person, then it's live, just kind of like how we're doing it. And like a Zoom call, so you can kind of see what people are doing. If you are going through like a kind of an active type of workshop, whatever you're teaching. Blog post. We just started a podcast. That's another thing we added. Social media. So all social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook. We don't do Twitter, nor TikTok. So I guess we don't have all social media, but we have two means of social media. Mm-hmm. Newsletters is like an email list in a sense. But yeah, we kind of look at it in a way. It's like, who are the people we want to be able to treat, or who are we looking to be able to work with? That's one thing. And then two is like, all right, how do those people interact with information? When you think about it yourself, you can think about how you do that, right? You listen to podcasts, you read blog posts, you go on Google, you on Facebook, you're on Instagram, or TikTok or Snapchat. I don't know however you consume your media. And or whoever your audience is, that's essentially how we have to go in all avenues, in a sense, to be to market, in a sense.
The reason that you do that is if you see it from the person's point of view. So if they have insurance that could pay for something in their mind, and they have to it has to be told to them, like, why would you come and see these other people? So they're going to go look at all the things that Erica just mentioned. They're going to look at your YouTube page. They're going to look at your website. They want to see if you exist first, like how legit are you? And then they're going to see what your information is. And some people watch a lot of your videos, or they'll like read some of your content. They want to see if they agree to it. They want to see if it speaks to them. You might write something about like, oh, does your shoulder hurt when you're lifting overhead? And they're like, oh yeah, mine does. So you have to try and find that commonality with them. But really a lot of the social media stuff that you're doing might not necessarily be that something that somebody sees and then they come see you directly. It might be that they're going to look at that after they hear about you to see what you are your skill set, who do you treat, to learn more about you, and then they'll maybe pursue you from there. And we've had some people that at first they're like, it's expensive, maybe I should use my insurance. And you're like, go do that. And then they go use their insurance, and then they come back and they're like, that was awful. I was one of 3 people. They threw me a TheraBand. I was doing some kind of starfish exercise.
Or the moon as they were 3 months ago, and that didn't change anything. So,
so
yeah.
I was going to say, some of our best clients are people that have been to other professionals and didn't work for them. So people are on the fence like that, and they haven't been to PT before or any kind of rehab. Tell them to go see other people, go do it. And maybe it works for them, and that's fine. But they still might remember too that you treat that population that you treat, and then they might refer someone else to you. So some of our, I'd say, longest lasting patients have gone to other healthcare professionals and had bad visits. And then you have the advantage because you have the time. So if you're going to see them for an hour, and then they're, orthopedic surgeon sees them for 5 minutes, they're going to just feel like you care more about them just to spend more time with them. So, yeah.
We call it like the nurture process is essentially what people call it, right? Just initially, I go through like buying process of like, all right, I'm going to buy a pair of shoes. It's probably, and I'm probably a far out example, and Joe can attest to this, but it probably takes me a good 6 months to figure out what shoe I want to get, actually even years at some points. So I'm looking at what type of shoe I want, and I'm not going to decide whether I'm going to buy it until a certain time.
Until it's discontinued.
Yeah,
And you have to research the next one.
But I'm I'm a weirdo when it comes to shopping and picking items. But I look at that and I'm like, how many times did I go to that website? I'll probably a lot,
It's like your homepage.
Yeah.
And Google's like, this is where you always go. So that's true.
Yeah, just buy the shoes already.
Yeah. And that's what he said. She has to tell me. It's like, hey, you should get those shoes. I'm like,
yeah,
I shouldn't, not yet. I'm not ready yet.
I'm like, I will buy them for you.
Yeah, so I feel like you guys are a really good example of kind of like a slow burn marketing strategy where you're posting tons of content all the time. I am very impressed by your Instagram. I feel like you guys put up so much great stuff all the time, which is really awesome. And can you guys still hear me?
Video is still loading, but we're still here. We can still hear.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if it's me or you, but I've been having a lot of trouble with my internet connection, so it wouldn't surprise me if it was me.
Yeah, I think it just show you new pictures, give you a different visual, That's what we're going for. And we'll maybe next time the video turns out.
But yeah, you're saying, you put out a lot of Instagram stuff, blog posts, podcasts, you're always at the gym, you're putting on seminars and workshops, and you're just doing a really good job of communicating in the most simple way possible, what you can help with. And then through, your service delivery, you're also communicating the fact that you care a lot about the people that you work with, which, I feel like at the end of the day, that's what most people want, is they just want somebody to take care of them. So once you can break down that initial barrier and get somebody in the door and show them that, it makes it easier and easier every time to start to accumulate more clients.
Well, appreciate that. That's really, really nice to hear that. Because again, I'll share this too. Is I was just talking to someone who has 1 million followers, or not 1 million, but 1,000, an amount of followers,
higher than I can count.
Yeah, 50,000. So let's say, for example, but she has a lot of followers, right? And she was like, and we're just talking about content in general, and we're like, and I feel this way. It's like, hey, you shared this to people. And whatever amount of your followers, it doesn't matter the amount of the followers, you just look at it and you don't really get a lot of feedback about it, right? Whether it's is anybody, you get to see are people watching it in some sense, you get the insight from Instagram or Facebook, just kind of the analytics. But in general, you don't really get visual feedback. I can see what you're nodding your head, like you're paying attention, so, that visual feedback, typically we just kind of send it out and it's like, well, there you go. So, and just talk to her, and she has a ton of followers, and she said the same thing. So it doesn't matter the audience size. I feel like everybody kind of goes through that in terms of when they're producing content in social media or whatever, that's YouTube, however you do that. It's kind of that factor that's always going to be there, no matter what your skill level is or how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And I know like one other really big question that I get all the time, and we might have already kind of talked about it, but lots of people panic and say, where do I even get clients? Like, where do I even start? And it sounds like, do you guys get most of your clients from the content you produce? Do like most people come to you and say like, hey, I saw your blog post on this, I saw your post on this, and I just wanted to come in and talk to you? Or do you find your clients in a different avenue?
I'd say our clients seem to look at our social media stuff from when we ask them, but I don't think we necessarily get them. A lot of it is, so far, I mean, it kind of changes, but it seems like a lot of it is mainly from people we've interacted with in person somehow. So maybe they did a workshop, they went to one of our Zoom things, maybe they're like a friend of somebody, so maybe a referral. Like that seems to be where we actually get clients, but then they still seem to look at our social media stuff though to see what we do. Because sometimes they'll just have a comment and they'll say something and you're like, don't even remember that we made a video on that, but it shows that they probably saw something at some time.
Yeah, mostly I'd say word of mouth. But it's funny because everybody kind of has their way of getting clients in this sense. And it could be the polar opposite. Like I have a buddy, he's a cash PT in California. He doesn't do any social media whatsoever. He has like a website, and most of his leads are from Google.
Oh, really? Cool.
And he does a newsletter every week.
Yeah.
So
nice.
That's his only thing. And then we have people who are just word of mouth only, and then there's some people who are just digital. That's all they do is just digital stuff, and then there's kind of like the combination. So I mean, we talked briefly about it before, like kind of the nurture process. Yeah. And it really depends on like whether your region maybe, or just kind of your style, but kind of
your clients.
And your clients. So I guess it I know that it's hard to say to give people like really vague answers sometimes, but like there's a huge variance in the people that who own cash practices. And it's crazy to hear what works for some people has no success for other people, So it's kind of a game too, where you just kind of have to try and see what's out there and just figure it out from there. I know it's tough because you want to be able to be like, I should definitely do this to make it work, but it might not work for you,
I think that in-person stuff definitely is a good place to start, like forming relationships with people in the area. So if you're going to treat people that are active, like go find those people and then just be in that community. I think that is a really good place to start. And I think that's one thing we didn't do starting off. Like we did more quantity rather than quality when it came to visiting different sites and talking to people. And there were times when I would go somewhere and come back like a month later and they won't even remember that I was there.
Yeah.
So it just shows how many people that come through their door where people just think you're trying to sell them something. But if they know who you are first, know your name, then it seems like you're more likely to have a good in there, or they're going to respect you a bit more, they at least remember you. So I think that would be pretty helpful. And I'd also say like pick like one or two main ways maybe you're going to market, and then really try and do that for a little while and then see how it does. I think we kind of diversified that too fast in the beginning, and then kind of like made all these different things that we're doing. And then now as you're coming back, now we're having to go back and like kind of refine some of it and like redefine how we're approaching it. I think that maybe having a better marketing plan, I guess I would say from the beginning, would maybe save you a lot of time.
Yeah. And I've heard this recently on Ben Bergeron's podcast. If you guys listen to that, Chasing Excellence, he was talking about his kids and like how many times you have to I don't have kids, but I remember being told as a kid how many times you have to do something, like you didn't put away your laundry, so or you didn't go to bed that morning, right? And it kind of it frames it in a way where you're like, all right, you have to hear or do something 7 to 9 times before you actually take an action to it. And if you look at it, if you think about that too, it's like whether it's, you know, you're going to McDonald's, like how often do you see the McDonald's sign? Like there are times where you've interacted with that sign, or, you know, something with, whether it's content or someone read something or something, they have to see it, or you have to tell somebody like 7 times before they understand, like, oh, I should really make my bed. That's probably a good idea, right? Like, or like brushing your teeth. Like, oh, that's really good. I should probably brush my teeth every day. Like,
Yeah.
Your parents have to tell you these things multiple times in order for your brain to like understand. But the same thing goes with like kind of the psychology of, you know, either marketing or sales, whether that is like those touch points really do matter in that sense.
Yeah. Do you pay for a marketer or a social media expert, or did you figure it out all by yourself?
Currently, we're doing it on our own. Erica started most of the social media stuff, and I've been helping her with it. I would love to get to the point that we could have someone else do it for us.
Yeah.
But we're still kind of in the early stages really of our practice, and really, I'd say since our main start was really in January, pretty much we've had the COVID thing going for a lot of, you know, half the time that we've been open, or maybe a third of the time. So.
Yeah, I would love to see somebody. That'd be awesome. Because then it frees up our time a little bit more. I feel like a lot of our time has kind of been at this creation mode, which is okay. Like if it's something that you enjoy doing, like writing or being on camera, or, you know, doing that type of stuff, then I think it's kind of a fun little escape from like your everyday like treatment of you know, with your clients or your patients. But it's also a lot more time consuming than you may imagine.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Like right now, my sister, she's been working as a VA for me for a while. So if you guys are interested, let me know. But she just like, she handles so much of my social media stuff for me that would normally take me like 5 or 10 hours probably a week to make sure I get all of that stuff out there. And I think like that's a big piece of like scaling probably, is like learning how to delegate and like what you can delegate, and also like learning to let go of things and be okay with like, you know, like 80% as good as you could do it. You know, I think that's a good rule to go by. But, you know, it sounds like from a lot of what you're saying with, you know, like the marketing stuff, is it's like, it's about creating opportunities for engagement with your community and to have conversations with people, whether it is on your social media or whether it is an email list, you know, or you show up on Google or you're doing seminars and stuff. Like the more opportunities that you give to your community to learn about who you are and get to know you, I feel like that's, you know, I think like Joe, you were saying, like that's a really good way to start off with things before you move into like tons of like automations and ads necessarily.
Yeah, and I think this is another one too that I just thought of and noticed as I interact with more people is some people have this like function. I don't know how to do it, but I think it's a great way to interact with people. Is if a person follows you or messages you, there's this like automatic function to be like, hey, thanks for, you know, messaging me, and it's just basically like a whatever script that you want to, but it automatically creates a conversation. So I don't know how to do it, but I've seen people do it, and I think it's really cool because I was like, oh, I got a message from her. That's cool. Like she thought of me, you know. But it's the same thing. It's like that personal connection, and you're like, oh, I wonder, you know, they're reaching out to me, so I'll respond back to that. So that's another way that you, and essentially don't have to pay for, you know, clicks or whatever. Is like just whoever that you interact with on your social media, you can send them a message and be like, hey, thanks for. This is another tip we got from Gigi. He's a PT entrepreneur over in South Carolina, but he said anybody who follows you, anybody who likes any of your posts, just message them and say, hey, thank you for interacting with the post, or thank you for, you know, or how's your day going, or whatever that may be. And that adds that extra layer. We don't do a good job about it by any means, because we definitely don't. But I think that was like a great way to get more interaction with someone you might not have seen just because they just liked your video or something, but that extra layer, and you just mentioned that recently, and I think that's a great way to have a little bit more interaction. with your audience.
Yeah.
We should do that.
Absolutely. And I think that like one piece that I try to, myself to do, and then like I tell other people who are new to this, is that you have to kind of learn how to be like assertive and like take initiative in developing these relationships, because I think a lot of us are just so nice that we don't want to like offend anybody by like, like talking too much or saying the wrong thing. But you have to learn how to like have more agency in your role as a practice owner, and like being the expert and being willing to, reach out and like deliver that message and say, hey, thanks for, liking my posts, like you are giving yourself the opportunity. You're not waiting for the opportunity to come to you. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is, they'll set up their practice and then say, okay, like, where are my patients? But you're not doing anything to like create that action and the opportunities for people to learn about you.
Yeah, another thing I heard recently too is from one of the personal trainers at the gym that we are at. And he worked with this guy who was like an awesome salesman at like a global gym, and he said, what would be the alternative if I don't help this person? Like, I'm helping the person, right? Whatever we're doing, we're helping that person. It's not like we're we're selling. Yeah, we're not trying to sell their like credit card numbers, or we're trying to sell them a fan that doesn't work. It's like what we actually do are helping. We're actually helping people. So I guess keep that in mind too. And I think that's something that really resonated with me when he said that. I was like, he's totally right, because the alternative would be that person's still going to have that problem, or they're not going to get help with that. And that's what we want to do. And that's the main goal of what we do, right? Is to help people figure out whatever problem that may be.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I think that's like a big piece of sales that just like nobody is going to know, like going into starting your own business. Like being able to be like a salesperson is a skill that you're just going to like constantly be developing. But I think that's a really good way to look at it. And it kind of goes back into that piece of like, well, who's going to pay me? But if you can communicate the fact that you can solve the problem for somebody, and like relieve them of the pain, help them with their fitness, etc. You can provide the solution. People will pay for that, and if you're able to communicate that well and show them like all the things that you can do for them, because you are helping them, like you said, it's a lot easier to make that sale for sure. What are some examples of topics you've done seminars on that you got a good audience for?
Yeah, so we work with CrossFitters. That's our main population. So we kind of went with the route of what are the most common injuries that we see with CrossFitters. And we've kind of framed it in different ways. One being like we've tried to start with a knee seminar, which I think a squat seminar probably, I don't know, maybe resonated more with people. I don't really know, but
not everyone might be hurt. It might be more that they are looking for a skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of hard to like. You have to maybe see the culture of the gym that you're at, maybe the age of the people that you're dealing with. So if you think like a lot of them have some kind of pain with something, maybe then you could say like, oh, it's a shoulder seminar. We're gonna help you lift overhead without being hurt. Or if it's like younger, maybe like improve performance. So you might have to change it a little bit for the wording, but I'd say a lot of like anything overhead for CrossFitters, they definitely need help with that. Typically, and then back stuff is pretty helpful for them as well.
We've done some desk seminars for some office, like corporate places. Mm-hmm. That's been fun too. So it's those are probably our main ones that we have that we generally have a good. I mean, pre-Corona, it's usually better. Definitely better. But during Corona, we had a decent. And again, with some of the seminars too, I'm not gonna like your first one. Like it does matter how you market it too. If you can have some help from the gym or from the office or whoever that you're hosting it at, I think that's helpful.
Yeah, because if they don't promote it, no one's going to show up. But then when they show up, you want to make sure that you. Sometimes if the group is bigger, we actually have less of a response later on because you don't want to do one-on-one time with people. So the magic number for us has been like maybe 6, 8, somewhere like that. Because then you get enough time that you can talk to each person. Like we've had some seminars we'll do it for like 8-10 people, and you don't get really a lot of feedback or any clients out of it. And then we had one that was like 5 out of 6 people came back and saw us as patients. So like the way that you run it is really can make a difference with it. Making sure that you like get one-on-one time with each person, try and use their name. Those things are very helpful.
Yeah, I'd say we prefer, that's just kind of our style. We just like to have the lower number and like a little bit more individualized like attention to each individual. But some people might do better with larger groups in like up to 20. It depends on kind of how you kind of like to communicate that. And it's also helpful to have another person there, just for like signing up. And if you do have a waiver or something that you want to have somebody sign, it's nice to be able to have 2 people there to kind of manage questions. And then you can also have somebody book for you. Like, so if you have a way to, like, for example, if like Joe's going to answer some of the questions, I'll take care of more of the admin. It doesn't have to be someone who's, skilled or whatever, like, it could be like your spouse or like, somebody who just is there to help you book and understand how to do it. Like, and the questions can be like, okay, if I was just like, if I wasn't a PT, I would help Joe in that way to schedule and not have to answer more of the technical questions.
Yeah. And just, so when you go in, like really practice what you're going to say. So if you're like, if you just show up and just talk about the topic and you're like, all right, well, we're done now. And then you leave, people might know that you would be willing to see them as a patient. You're like, oh, thanks for the credit. And it's like the credits are rolling now at the end of the movie theater, and people are like waiting to see if there's anything after the show, like in the Avengers movies. They're like, Thanos going to be in this at the end? I don't know. So it's good to like kind of express why you're there, maybe, and tell them and say, oh yeah, and we know that people probably have different kinds of issues in the crowd. Like, we'll stay after, answer any question that you have, like try and be available for them. Sometimes maybe if you're doing an offer, you could tell them, anyone that shows up at these seminars, if you signed in, we have your email address, we'll give you a discount on the first session.
Cool.
Do something where they know that they can see you as a patient, because otherwise, if I have time, I'll get done. I'm like, all right, is there coffee? And then, it gets real awkward, and then they don't know if they're supposed to come see you or if they should just leave. So it's good to make sure that you kind of, like, you're the one in the room that's the authority. So you want to make sure that you're telling them like what's going on, and when you're done, and tell them to stay after. You know what I mean? Like, just kind of have a good flow to it, and offer to see them if they need it. That's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, it sounds silly, but like that's kind of part of like the whole piece of having a business is you have to make it clear to people that they can pay you to come see you, and you're not just somebody who's there to like talk about body parts and that's it. Thanks for coming. So I think that is a really good point. I think that those are great tips for people wanting to do a seminar or a webinar. Those are things I didn't even think about, just having somebody to like do some admin stuff, having an offer there and kind of having like a, I don't know, like kind of like an end piece, like an end cap to things, to make it clear that they can go if they want, but, you're also there to talk to them and get to know them, things like that. So I think that that'll be really helpful for other people who are wanting to do seminars and webinars and things. Second to last question, if you had to give 1 to 3, up to you, 1 to 3 pieces of advice to somebody who is brand new at this, what would they be?
Want to give one? I'll give one. How about that?
I'd say be patient. It's not going to happen overnight, and just expect mistakes. I think especially with people now, I think are so used to like quick gratification and all that, and it's just not going to happen that way. Very few people start and then have this like amazing experience. Normally, it's going to be really difficult. If you are working somewhere else, or if you have a spouse that's working somewhere else, like you'll probably have to work part-time first, or do something like that, or work at another job and then slowly taper your time back. Just expect it's going to take some time, and anything that's worth doing takes time, and anything that is quality is going to take time. So just make sure that you're helping people and being genuine. And I know it sounds so cliche, but I'm telling you, they'll remember you way better if you help them out, or if you like give them some tip at the gym, and then that'll get them curious about you. So I would say just be in it for the long haul. Don't get discouraged. Don't quit 2-3 months in because you're not quitting your other job yet. And just understand that this is going to be your lifestyle.
Yeah. think that's awesome.
Yeah. And Joe touched on basically just it's just long-term growth, and sometimes it takes some dedication to it. So I'm reading a book called The Perennial Seller. I don't know if you guys heard of that book, but Ryan Holiday wrote it, and it's just basically just how to become a classic in some senses. And one of the things that he mentions is, if you're a writer, you write a book, and you devote your life to it. That's all you do. Is 1 year. That's nothing else. You don't do anything else. So if you think about what we're doing as a business owner, we do a lot of things. So with that time being displayed in so many different directions, I think that kind of goes along the point with being patient, because sometimes it just even the cover art on some of the like A Kill a Mockingbird took a year. So keep that in mind, and then see how many copies that wrote. So it just in addition, that's just something to think about, and it's been helping me get some perspective, because sometimes we can feel like we want everything to happen right now, and then I realized, okay, well, you can't write something that's going to be great in 10 seconds, So you have to that the dedication is there. But that's just kind of piggybacking off that point. But I'd say the main thing that I would recommend would be your business education starts now. Is whatever it is that you want to learn about, watch some YouTube videos, read some books, ask some friends who are in just ask people questions. And I think that's how you can kind of learn how to do things. And then once people tell you about stuff, research it, look it up, and just kind of keep going and keep learning. Even if it's, maybe you're thinking about it and you're not sure if you're quite yet there, at least you're reading about it and you're learning about it. And that's just going to help you no matter what. And nobody can take your education or knowledge away from you. So.
She's right. So start now. Once we're done here and it's called over. It sounds funny, but if you start automatically, start planning out content now, even before you make your company, if you have 3 or 4 good blog articles in the bank that you can just release them slowly over the week, there's no stress to get it done. If you start batching your content now, you could start doing research now. I mean, whatever phase you feel like you're in, you can definitely start right now. And even if you're working for another job, even if you're spending 10 minutes a day looking up how to get a business license, start doing that as soon as you can. That's one thing I wish we would have done earlier. Knowing what I know now, I probably would have started in school doing stuff, started the marketing already, start getting people excited about what you're doing, putting out videos, because then you could have, a year or 2 years worth of content. By the time you start, people are going to be lining up to see you then. I mean, people are going to be so much more familiar with you. Even if you're in school, you could still go out in the community that you think you're going to work in. If you're going to be in that city, start meeting the gym owners, start meeting the people that are Pilates instructors or wherever you're going to practice. And you have the time now. Go do it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I agree with you. If I had known, I would have started way, way earlier. And I think that's really key to talk about, how this does take, a lot of time. I feel like, what I want most people who are brand new to this to know is that, you're really going to see whether your business is going to work or not, in the first 12 to 18 months, I would say. You really have to push, for that amount of time to see what's going to happen, what's working, what's not, if it's going to be, if it's trending up, in revenue and everything. Because I feel like sometimes people get into this and they're expecting stuff, the first 2 weeks, or like you said, the first 10 seconds that you start something. But it has to be something that, you can't shut up about. So you're going to start this business, and then you just have to give whatever percentage of yourself that you can to this over a really long period of time. It's not even that long either, a year. But then, kind of like Joe, like you're saying, I think once you jump into it, a big difference between living a day-to-day life and living an entrepreneurial life is that as an entrepreneur, you have to be seeing 3 to 6 months ahead of time, at least, kind of where you're going to be taking things so that your actions now can get you the results that you want at that point in time. And so learning to have that long-term vision, I think is really important.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but great advice, guys. Thanks. So last thing here, self-promo time. Tell us your business, where people can find you, anything you're working on right now, and how can all of us watching, everybody here, best support you?
Okay, so I'm Erica, and this is Joe. We're a White Wong PT. We're in Las Vegas. We have two locations. One in the southwest portion. We're in CrossFit Culmination South. It's like Sunset and 215, and then we have a Summerlin location, which is in CrossFit Culmination North, and that's like Charleston and Durango. That's kind of the cross streets. We have, again, I think you mentioned Facebook,
yeah,
and Instagram, White Wong PT.
Yep, and then the website is whitewongpt.com. So there's links to some of our stuff on there.
Yeah, and we did just release a podcast episode, so we have friends and family that could. We actually our first episode is we interviewed a tour guide. He does tours like from Grand Canyon and he also does them on the Strip. But come time, if you're ever interested in visiting Vegas, we have lots of fun gems about cool restaurants and more local stuff. That's really our goal, is to check out some more local stuff. And I'm sure as we travel again, people will come to Vegas and go ham.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. If you want, when we get off, if you want to post the link to your podcast, well, I'll check it out.
All right. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate it. I know that there was so much that we talked about today that'll be really, really helpful for a lot of the therapists that are in this group. So we all really appreciate it. And yeah, so you guys, if you want to contact Erica and Joe, I'll put their contact information in the description of the video here, and definitely reach out to them. They've been an amazing resource for me. So feel free to reach out to either of us. And then, as you guys know, if you're ready to start a practice or just curious about it, please send me a message. I love helping people do this. So, definitely contact me and we'll get you going. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Morgan.
Thanks.